And there were a couple of years where I was like, I don't think God is here. And I don't know if I believe anymore. And I had these beautiful friends who said, it's okay if you don't believe. We'll hold it for you until you can believe again. And to me, that was such a tremendous gift. And they did, and I did. I found my way back.
On In Good Faith, we believe that all faith traditions have something to teach us about how God is working in the world and in our lives. So join us as we listen and learn and discover how speaking with people of other faiths can strengthen our own faith and even our own practice. Have you heard the phrase, vulnerability breeds vulnerability? That's where if I dare to share a little bit about myself, then other people might dare to do the same. And I think that's true. And if it is, then you're going to get a really good dose of it in this interview. Amy Butler is not afraid to look honestly at the messiness of life, including her own. And frankly, that's pretty inspiring. In fact, the book that brought her to our attention is called Beautiful and Terrible Things: Faith, Doubt, and Discovering a Way Back to Each Other. Besides being an author, Pastor Amy Butler has served congregations in New York, Washington, D.C., and New Orleans. Pastor Amy grew up in Hawaii, the daughter of a leader in the Hawaiian community.
The cover has a picture of a flower called an ohia lehua on it. An ohia lehua is the first plant that grows after a lava flow has destroyed an area of land. And it's a very gnarly shrub, and then it has these beautiful red flowers that burst out across this black landscape of lava. And it was very important to me to have that flower on the cover, because what I was attempting to do in this book was to tell the truth about my life, because I think I'm not alone. I think that other people have beautiful and terrible things in their lives too, that other people doubt their faith from time to time. I mean, I'm counting on that.
Yeah.
It's what gets me through.
We know you're not alone. And I'm guessing the reaction from the book has sort of let people give you feedback to say, I've been there too.
Yes. Some of the stories I've heard from people have been so deeply powerful. Just being able to say, you know, there are times when I'm angry at God. There are times when I wonder if what I've been taught my whole life is true. There are times when things that I thought would be permanent become impermanent. I tell the story in the book about sort of the development of my faith, starting with working at a homeless shelter and meeting a young woman named Chloe, who eventually was killed. She was a prostitute on the corner, 15 years old. And I had grown up in a tradition where, you know, you just follow the rules and say the right prayers and life would be fine. And meeting this young woman changed my life and changed my faith. And it taught me that systems are broken and that it's not as simple as I was taught, and that life can be really, 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 really hard and painful.
Yeah. You base the title on a quote I'll read here. Frederick Buechner: "Here is the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid."
Yes.
You've written sermons for years.
Yes.
How was this book different, or was it different than writing a series of sermons?
Oh, Steve, this book was so hard to write. It took 6 years and several different iterations of the book, because I really worked hard to write from my scars and not my wounds. So I didn't want to bleed all over everyone telling horrible stories about life, but I wanted to tell stories that were reflective of maybe common experiences that everyone has. I tried to be as honest as I could in hopes that the people who read this book would be like, oh, I can be honest about my life too. Because it's such a relief not to have to be fake, you know?
Yeah. You talk about, I think, a realization of a kind of sense of feeling God's love when you're in a relationship. I think lots of us relate to that. When did you first put your finger on that? And how did you realize, oh, this is showing me something about divinity?
I grew up in a very close church setting, and that was wonderful because it surrounded me with a sense of safety and love. So I think that I felt God in the presence of my family and my church from the time I was a young child. That was a gift to me, and it was also quite difficult when I became an adult and a pastor and found out that the church is made of people who sometimes don't behave like they love Jesus. That sort of mixture in my head of the church being God and God being the church, I had to separate them to build a faith that was adjacent to the communities that I served, because communities are made of people and people are hard.
And interesting that Jesus talks about our need to learn to see him in other people, which sometimes we think is an impossible task, depending on the day or the person. But that it seems like the way that we show love for God and have a relationship so often is through other people. Not just sitting on a mountaintop, as wonderful as my mindfulness and meditation sessions are for me. That's just, I think, prep work in some ways.
Yes. People will read this book and will ask me often, why do you stay in the church? Why do you stay? And I can't quit her, is what I always say, because I truly believe that communities of faith that learn to love and care for each other can change the world. I deeply believe they are necessary, and I want to be part of building them. That's a painful endeavor. And in the book, I talk often about losing my faith, Steve. And
Yeah.
a lot of people of faith don't ever admit to that, but I suspect I'm not alone.
There's a little quote in here that just has stuck with me from the moment I read it, which is something like, these people don't know I'm standing there as a person who just barely believes.
That's correct.
And that was a really interesting way of describing it. It tells me that you're maybe hanging on to something, but there's also some reasons why it might be difficult.
Right. That's part of a beautiful time in my life when I have a group of pastor friends. There are 6 of us. We meet once a year. And there were a couple of years where the church was behaving so badly that I was like, I don't think God is here. And I don't know if I believe anymore. And I had these beautiful friends who said, it's okay if you don't believe. We'll hold it for you until you can believe again. And to me, that was such a tremendous gift. And they did, and I did. I found my way back.
It sounds like there was some wisdom they had from life experience, maybe?
I think our pain teaches us, doesn't it?
You've gone through that experience. What maybe I would call it is caring for the opinion of God rather than of man, because my mind was kind of boggled about some particular people who even hacked into your email.
Yes.
I guess that's a time to exercise some faith in God if you're going to hang on and not in the people.
Church is really hard, and the story you're referencing is I fired the youth minister, and his family was part of the church, and I was a young pastor, and they behaved so poorly. Like, I would get up in the pulpit and start preaching, and the whole family would stand up and walk out. But what you're referencing is they did hack into my email, and I had written an email that said, I am so tired of this shit. And they printed out 100 copies and had Grandma hand them out at the door. And it was quite funny the way it turned out, because we had a council meeting to discuss this horrible situation. And the chair of the committee said, is anyone here surprised that Pastor Amy swore? And no one raised their hand. I've taken this approach of trying to be human in every pastoral situation that I find myself in, because I can't be anything else. Because if I have to be somebody really awesome and amazing who believes in God all the time and is totally perfect, I will fail.
You have been a pioneer in so many ways. People are not as surprised these days to see a woman who's a rabbi or a priest, a pastor. But that was not the case when you were growing up. What was that like, and feeling a sense of call? And then what were you up against when you decided
I grew up in a very conservative, evangelical sort of
Right.
setting. The only women I ever saw up front were like the warbly sopranos from the choir who were singing solos, Didn't even occur to me that a woman could be a pastor. Didn't even think about it until I got to college and I started taking religion courses, and I started thinking about the theology of the Holy Spirit and how the Holy Spirit shows up wherever she wishes to show up, and that God is ever creating something new. And it occurred to me that probably God would not exclude 50% of the human family when it comes to proclaiming the gospel. I also looked around at my fellow colleagues and thought, these guys are the future of the church. They're going to need some help. So I was at a Baptist university and decided I'm going to be a pastor. And my parents just couldn't understand that and didn't come to my ordination, and my grandparents were very upset about it. So I've spent most of my life being the black sheep of the family.
By becoming a pastor. That's
right.
Sort of funny.
I could have chosen anything else. I'm a pastor and I'm the black sheep of the family, and it's still hard. So I've moved home to Hawaii to take care of my parents, and they still don't believe in women pastors. In fact, they go to the very conservative Presbyterian church next door to mine. And every Sunday, my mother will count the cars in the parking lot to see who got the most. And that has been a thread of my life. I've been the first woman pastor at every church that I have pastored. And I really felt, especially as a young pastor, that people were like, we're going to watch her fail.
Rather than rallying around.
That's right. Being a first, you have to do better than everybody else. You have to show them that you can do it. So that's been a big theme in my life. Not so much anymore, as you said. Time has shifted everything in the 25 years that I've done this. But I recall times, for example, when I was pastor of Riverside Church, a huge cathedral on the Upper West Side of New York, Manhattan, and I would be in the cathedral on Saturday preparing for worship, and the security guard would come in and say, "Miss, there's no one allowed in the nave at this time. You need to leave," and try to kick me out. And that happened multiple times.
I wonder if you talk a little bit about ritual, because you bring up rituals that can be part of pastoring a church and what that can mean to people, or perhaps to you as the pastor or the worship leader even.
Right. In particular, you'll read stories about Ash Wednesday in the book. As a pastor, it's my favorite time to look someone in the eye, to put the ashes on their forehead and to say, remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return, but the love and goodness of God continues forever. And to be able to just be human with another person in that moment is one of the biggest gifts of being a pastor.
I went to my first Ash Wednesday service at our local Episcopal church here, because I'm friends with the woman who is the pastor there. And it was really quite a moving service. I hadn't been to that particular one before for Holy Week, and I really wanted to. And I think you're not just there as a congregation, but the act of having the ashes put on your forehead, that's a one-to-one
That's right.
thing that somehow I thought just made it all the more meaningful.
That's right. In that moment, how did you feel about your humanity? I'm curious.
I did not feel depressed, like, oh, they reminded me I'm going to die. I've been trying to forget about that. I felt like, that's right. And so I should consider what I do with the time I have.
Yes, yes. I've, over the years, developed different approaches, especially to serving communion. And I now, instead of saying, this is the body and blood of Christ, when I serve someone communion, I give them the bread and the cup and I say, you are a beautiful and beloved child of God. Because I think we just don't hear that enough.
You know, there are no perfect people, and there are no perfect families, and no perfect relationships. So how do we be good people and have good relationships and good families? How do we do better at what is most important to us? I'm here to tell you about The Lisa Show, another in the family of BYU radio podcasts. Lisa Valentine Clark is a comedian, a believer, a single mother. She delves into the challenges and the relationships that shape all of our lives, whether we're talking about parenting, mental health questions, social issues, being a caregiver. She and her council of moms tackle the topic. Yes, you'll hear from experts, but you'll also hear from the people who have been digging the trenches. She'll help you figure out this thing called life with lots of laughs along the way. It's The Lisa Show. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This is In Good Faith. We're speaking with Pastor Amy Butler about her memoir, Beautiful and Terrible Things. You tell me what you're comfortable with. To me, a hugely beautiful section was where you're talking about losing your second child, the second pregnancy.
Yes.
And it's easy in religion because it's helpful for teaching children to say, this is good, this is bad. And it's black,
Yes.
it's white, and they somehow almost never even touch somehow. But we carry that sometimes into our adult lives, and then I wonder if black and white thinking isn't what causes some people to leave, because if suddenly everything isn't just perfect, then it's all bad, because those seem to be the two choices.
That's right. I think those binary choices really mess us up. The story you're referring to is the story I write about losing my second child at birth. I had just graduated from seminary, and I thought to myself, this is terrible. I was going to be a pastor, but now I hate God. So what am I going to do? I just have this newly minted degree, but I really hate God. And there's a story that I tell in the book about a friend who said to me, just lay on the floor and scream and yell and kick your feet and just be as mad as you want to be at God. God can handle it. And that has been like a principal pillar of my faith since then. It's okay to be angry at God.
That God can take it.
She told me, when your toddler, my 2-year-old, has a temper tantrum, do you love him any less? No, of course not. And God can handle whatever it is you're carrying. And it's okay to be angry. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to have doubts. Let's make space for that. Let's build communities where other people can feel free to ask questions about their faith and wonder about their lives. And so that's been the principal focus of my career, but it's built on my own life and my own faith and the times when I thought God was absent or didn't even believe in God.
It seems like there have been sort of little signpost moments. I think God sometimes appears in our lives in ways that are just murky enough. We have to decide, yep, that's God, or we don't know. It's not like, well, how could I deny this? And one of those seemed to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when you had a dream about a little girl.
I love this story, and I also am scared to tell it sometimes because I think people think I'm a weirdo, but I kind of am a little bit. But also, in Hawaii and in indigenous communities, spirituality is very woven together. And so I myself often have dreams about things that happen, and I think it has something to do with my Hawaiian heritage. But when I was recovering from delivering that baby, I had a very vivid dream about a baby who was sitting on a cloud. And I woke up and I told my husband about it. And I said, it was really weird because it wasn't our child. Our 2-year-old has blonde hair. And this one had dark skin and these big, big black eyes and curly, curly hair. And our second child is adopted. And the first time I set eyes on her, I recognized her from my dream. And I have to say, Steve, and I would guess that any of your listeners who have been adopted parents might agree with me, that adoption has been one of the most deeply spiritual parts of my life. It's like God took me by the shoulders and said, you belong together. I have to tell you a story that's not in the book. My daughter, when she turned 18, came home with a tattoo on her arm. It was a whole sleeve tattoo. And I was just like, oh, You're never going to get a job. So in my maturity, I decided the best thing I could do would be to ignore it. It was like a wing, and it had feathers on it. And it became a joke in the family because she would say to her brothers, yeah, Mom's still not talking about my tattoo. And about a year after she got it, we were sitting on the beach in Hawaii, and she said, can I tell you about my tattoo? And I said, yeah. And she said, this is a wing that represents you and represents that I belong with you, and that you are the wing that covers my life and holds me close. And of course, I started crying. I still cry about it. And I think I'm like the worst mother ever, like the worst. So I've made a lot of mistakes and had so many gifts along the way, too.
That's beautiful, and I'm sure many people will relate. I have a few moments that I think I choose to believe those were miracles. I can't prove it to anyone else, but I just know not only what happened, but what seemed to be implanted in my mind and heart at the same time, that I thought this came from outside me, from something much bigger and beyond my understanding.
I feel like God is sort of walks alongside me and is like, probably not the best choice. Let's go this way. And then also during the deepest times of grief, I write in the book, in a chapter called Suitcases, about my divorce. It was not expected by me. I was very surprised. And I remember just like clinging to my faith with everything I had to get through that. And it's interesting that when the baby died, I was so angry at God, but when the divorce happened, I felt God in the love of other people so much, in my church community, in my neighborhood, people who just showed up to help me take care of the kids and live through that life situation that I never wanted to experience.
And maybe it's partly related to you having to make your way and find your way throughout your life, sometimes being the first person to do what you've done and experiencing the difficulties that you thought, mostly as a pastor, you would be just walking other people through. But you get to go through them as well. Chapter 10, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which I think is representative of trying to figure out how to have people be welcome in church, how to have a sense of belonging, and how not to, I guess, close the doors to people. Even though most churches say visitors welcome, yes, please come worship with us, but that's not always the reality. Do you mind? As I recall, it was right before a service, an organist walked up and quit. Like right before
Steve,
they were needed.
It was terrible. It was terrible. Not only that, there was somebody filming a documentary that day about women pastors. So there was a film crew in there, and the organist felt that I wasn't being welcoming enough to the LGBTQ community, and so he walked out. And, you know, my 10 years of piano lessons, I can't. God has not given me that talent. So we had a musicless service. And soon after that, the deacons met and said, you know, I think we need to be really open about who we are and who we welcome. And so we began a 6-month process of telling stories, of reading the Bible, of watching documentaries and other stories about people of faith who had dealt with issues of LGBTQ inclusion. And at the end, we took a vote on a welcoming statement. It was, all members of Calvary Baptist Church have equal access to leadership opportunities and pastoral care. And I tell in the book about an older member of the church raising her hand in the business meeting and saying, I don't understand this homosexuality thing, but if you all think this is where we need to go, then let's go. It was a unanimous vote, and we became a church that welcomed everyone and was able to say that. And I've done that over and over at churches, helped us be open and honest about who is welcome. Because church can hurt people, and I don't want to be part of a community that excludes or hurts anyone.
Well, people do get asked, and you have been, why do you continue to go if it treats you the way it treats you?
Yeah, that goes back to like, I can't quit her, because there are these moments of grace where we had one just last Sunday. In July, we did a series called The Church Has Left the Building. So we would have worship and then we'd go work at the homeless shelter or domestic violence shelter. And someone gave her testimony on Sunday about how the experience that her children had making toiletry bags for the houseless community had really spurred conversation around their dinner table and changed the way their family was thinking about people who don't have places to live. And, like moments like that when the church does her thing, they're the best ever. And I long for them, and I want to be part of building them.
Well, that's evident from what you write, and really beautiful that you take us on your learning journey. Rather than saying, here are the things I know, you sort of say, I think in almost every chapter, here's where I was, and here's what hit me over the head. And
that's right.
Here's how it came out different.
That's right.
But you seem to be okay.
Well, it depends on the day, Steve. But, I have experienced the gift and presence of God in relationships with people who I didn't even expect. And I'm just unwilling to give that up. I want to keep looking for hints of God, even among people who don't agree with me on some of these things. I think that's the only way we will find our way back to each other, especially now as our country is going through such a divided time. If we cannot be in relationship with each other, we'll never find our way back.
Yeah. It's almost like it's being engineered so there is no middle to exist. We talked about black and white. And
that's right.
That even in interpersonal relations, this political party or this issue means we're not even going to talk or meet ever, or maybe even cross paths online or in person.
That's right. 2 weeks ago, I did my niece's wedding. She is a lesbian and she married another woman. And my parents sat in the front row. And, it made being a woman minister seem really, really not that bad. But, I was so proud of my parents because they didn't believe anything that was happening. But my dad said, love is more important. Love is more important. And I was just so proud of them for showing up. And I want to live my life in that way, remembering that love is more important than the things that divide us.
Many thanks to Amy Butler for speaking with me. This episode was produced by Heather Bigley. Our production team also includes Aaliyah Alexander, Heidi Hansen, Nick Levitt, Ocean Marshall, and James Sturdivant. Our post-production sound designers are Mark Hansen, Lawrence Sandberg, and DJ Cromarty. Did you know that In Good Faith has an occasional newsletter? Why not subscribe? InGoodFaithPodcast.com is the place to do that. In Good Faith is committed to the idea that we all benefit from hearing people of widely varying backgrounds share their personal experience with faith and belief. In fact, we think people with such experience deserve some of our best listening. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at In Good Faith Podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for extended interviews. In Good Faith is a production of BYU Radio. I'm Stephen Cap Perry. I hope you join me again soon, right here, In Good Faith.
We speak every week with people of different religious traditions and faiths. They don't all agree, but we find the commonalities and we're inspired by their search and their journey. I want to recommend another BYU podcast I think you're going to like. It's Uncomfy, Sticking with Moments That Challenge Us. It's brand new. There's video as well as audio. And if you want to learn how to engage with others on important topics, but maybe you don't know how, or you've just had it with social media and people arguing and demonizing each other, check out Uncomfy, Sticking with Moments That Challenge Us. There's a new one every Wednesday. You can listen or watch on the BYU Radio app or wherever you get your podcasts.